Located on the south side of Slamet Riyadi Road, this museum was founded on 1890 during Pakubuwono IX. In the past, this building was known as Loji Kadipolo, which originally belonged to Johannes Buselar, then purchased by Pakubuwono X and handed over to Pahaman Radia Pustaka in 1913 to be used as a museum. The museum keeps traces of the literary tradition that has long been part of the life of the people of Solo City. As a royal territory in ancient times, the people of Solo were accustomed to a variety of free ideas as
Pak
outlined in
Johan,
the form
selamat
of
sore
reading
Pak.
culture. Radia Pustaka Museum itself stores hundreds of ancient manuscripts, which
Mbak
are
Saskia,
references
Mbak
and
Christa.
sources of research on Javanese
Selamat
history
esok
and
Pak
culture
Said.
from various academic
Om Johan,
circles around the world.
selamat esok.
Apart from being a city of culture, Solo is also a city of education. One of the well-known educational centers in Surakarta is Universitas Sebelas Maret, occupying a
Masuk
major
Suma.
KBRI Paramaribo
Dia
masuk.
kabare.
Mbak Kathleen.
The UNS
Baik,
campus is one
Mbak.
of the green areas in the city of Solo.
Sehat.
Mas Alif.
Being a center for
Kepoyo
various
non.
academic activities, the UNS campus is also a
Matur
center
nuwun,
for
matur
study
nuwun.
and activities in
KBRI
Javanese
Paramaribo
culture
udah
and
masuk nih.
Javanologi. Speaking about morning
Aku sangka
routines
Lili
in
Dorok,
Solo,
Pak Said.
it won't be
Hah?
complete without the existence of
Lili
traditional
Dorok,
markets.
Paramaribo.
Although it is traditional, the
Oh.
government has rebuilt the market space into a more convenient and clean building. This is intended to make
Umihan,
both sellers and
mic is not
visitors
compute.
comfortable in doing transactions in the market.
Nang
If
Lili
you are
Dorok
talking
good,
about
so Lili
traditional
Dorok Pak
market
Said.
in Solo, Pasar
Yeah.
Gede is the one you want to
Iya,
visit first.
Lili
Pasar
Dorok good,
Gede
so
was built by
Paramaribo
Dutch
itu
architect Herman
20
Thomas
kilometer
Carlsen
kilo.
during Pakubuwono
Lili
X.
Dorok
Aku
besok,
durung
toh.
ngerti mergo durung rono, engko nek rono lah ngerti.
Mesti diundang karo Mbak
Various
Sakia kan
calendar
Pak
Amin,
and designates
amin.
for Solo residents are partly distributed by traders through this market.
Apa karo aku merono bareng ya?
Ayo Pak, ayo Pak.
Ya, ya. Terus iso
Ini,
kenal Said.
Mata
Heeh.
bagai tak melihat,
Apa ya Pak?
bibir tak bicara, namun jarak tak kian menjauh. Semua orang terbisu, kaku membangkai. Kesunyian datang, memecah renyai hujan merah darah.
Lockdown. This asphalt mile and eyeless street, this distant smile and furtive nod, this tremor of doubt, this hesitant step, this faint shout of an unseen child, this winking light
Iki
on a
Profesor
lake,
Josephine saka Australia.
this frigid night in a starry cave, this dusty
Australian
ground,
National University.
this ghost gum
Yeah.
tree, this search for sound beyond
Guru basa Jawa ning kono.
Corona, sebuah nama. Corona, nama yang menakutkan, maut. Nama yang memisahkan, beribadah di rumah.
Iki Pak Howell Coleman. Mbak Siska mesti ya kenal
Di
gitu.
rumah aja.
Hai Mbak Siska.
Nama yang menyebabkan kecemasan, penderitaan,
Selamat sore.
kesengsaraan, pengangguran,
Oh ya, sore ya
kematian.
di sana.
Pantun Corona. Kenanga putih tersusun rapi. Tangkai menjuntai.
Ini Prof Syukur dari
Dunia
IPB Bogor.
terperih. COVID-19 itu penyebabnya. Bunga matahari mekar merona, berbaris-baris kanan dan kiri.
Pak
Semua
Said,
berhenti
Pitulukor.
karena
Kemarin
corona.
aku tekan Indonesia.
Baris bumi sedang diuji.
Pitulukor.
Mampir ke Pak Said. Ya.
Oh iya iya. Isih poso, isih poso.
And for the
Apik.
Epidamas Master, and by the remembrance of God we seek
Kapan
health
posone
and
sing
we
bibit,
go
Pak?
further if it comes.
Hah?
Leave the pessimism
Kapan bibit
about you
posone?
and smile. Don't leave
Tanggal
us out
11.
in distress. Despite
Oh,
the
oke.
hardships and
11 ya?
tribulations, this
11
epidemic will not
Maret.
extend.
11 ning yo
The
iso
remembrance
rolas.
of Allah, our hearts
Ya.
are reassured.
Apa-
Upon Him everything
apa April,
Mungkin
ya?
was
isih
paid.
di kuburan.
Let goodness accelerate and
Ini
let
aku
us
wis minggu.
master and be patient.
Ya.
Rise together now.
Sugeng sonten
Overhead,
Ibu Sister.
little circle. No
Sugeng
contrast line
sonten,
in the rhythmic
pun
order.
kabaripun.
Lower
Ah,
and lower
Pripun
in the
ape KPAP kita
city below.
sampai yang tempung di saya
Day
nang
stillness
Nederland,
we see
Holanda
what
apa
once
nang
moved unnoticed.
nang
Yeah,
Engeland.
wonten
Covered with
Leiden.
the smoke
Oh,
and
Leiden.
Leiden.
the distraction
Yeah.
of manifold.
Panjenengan wonten pundi?
Focus now
Kulo
on
ing
God in you.
kulo ing Harlem.
Their
Hmm.
prey
Oh,
exposed.
Harlem.
Ya, ije. Coverage di empakel harap gaitolan.
COVID-19 pandemic
Nggih.
in
Isih adem ya, Pak?
Ije ya.
How much longer
Ina nang
will
kene
you
ya,
forget
wis winter ya.
God forever?
Menak kowe nguyo nganune banyune dadi es.
Will you hide yourself from me? How long
Ya,
must I endure
Enggak joke.
virus? How
Iso
long
digo teken.
will sorrow
Nggih.
fill my heart day and night?
Lian aku nang kene
How long will my
seminggu
enemy
enak snow to ya.
over me?
Nah, aku nang Suriname kae
Look at me,
nak panas-panas
God,
kae ngombe
and son.
tuku es to terus dikai
Restore
sirup to
my
ya.
strength.
Terus aku njiko nang jopo iku dari iso
Don't
digawe
let
kaya
my
ngono.
enemy say,
Es.
Aku wis nampa filmnya saka Mbak Siske.
and don't
Oh,
let
oke.
them gloat
Oh ya.
over
Oh ya.
my downfall.
Rasis kembarang kaya ngono barang.
Oh God, I am sinking in a deep mud,
Mas Kilat
and
Wono,
there is no
Sugeng
solid
Sonten.
ground.
Nggih.
Oh, Mbak.
Wilujeng enjing.
Menika enjing nggih wonten Suriname.
Nggih,
Wonten
teng
Suriname
Suriname
menapa
enjing.
Lanti?
Pripun?
Wonten saking Suriname utawi saking Walanda?
Mboten, kula saking Suriname.
Oh, nggih.
Tiang Suriname. Tiang Suriname juga.
Nggih,
Pripun
nggih.
kabare? Nggih.
Saya alhamdulillah.
Nggih.
Oh, Mbak Morgan sudah ada, Mbak Morgan.
Hi, Prof.
Hai, how are you, Mbak Morgan?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm very good.
Untuk bersama-sama
Sing do tahu urung tahu ngerti Mbak Morgan iki Mbak Morgan.
yang terpapar virus corona COVID-19.
Iki sing ngomong Bu Guru kembar, jadi nyate kembar Pak.
Dan para
Nah, iki.
yang berbakti untuk negeri di garda paling depan.
Oh, Bu Florence.
Corona.
Nggih.
Nggih.
Corona merambah nusa.
Pak Johan nek ana pertemuan board JID-NL Mbak Siske iso diundang.
Nah, ini apa, Pak?
Nek ana rapat board
Oh, rapat
JID-NL.
apa? Iya, nganu sini enak rame-rame ngono.
Heeh, ning nek wis hawane panas wae Pak, nek adem-adem ku ndak aku ning dalan.
Apa aku arep ngelingan, arep tak penura lali nggih. Ja. Dus je zal wel uitnodiging van mij ontvangen hoor. Van JID-NL als wij activiteiten hebben.
Oh ja, graag ja.
Ja, want ik was inderdaad de afgelopen activiteit vergeten. Maar dan ga ik ook mijn collega's vragen om niet te vergeten.
Oké, dank je.
Ja.
Ja.
Oh. Goedemorgen Pak Johan.
Ja, siapa sing ngekurut aku iki?
Aku Floran.
Oh. Ano, siapa namanya?
Sukat betul.
Ahmed naik atau
Florence.
Oh, Florence. Kok ora kelingan ya.
Ya, lah
Aku
yo.
aku wiro kuwe nang Facebook karo nang foto. Nah
Iya.
penana karo video ya. Oh ya saiki aku kelingan. Jadi nang kono piye karo pencak silate?
Oh, nggih, saya mawon. Saya
Florence, ben yet?
Ya, saya
ya, Hur,
Florence
Saskia.
pencak silat. Ya.
Iya.
Ini saya kan solder bril.
Iya. Saya kasih Braille. Braille tak
Oh, ya.
goleki mbok nanti. Ora ketemu.
Hilang.
Ya, waar ben jij, Saskia? Nang di kue, nang kantor apa?
Ja, van mij
Nang oma?
ook hilang.
Nang oma? Sam.
Ergens, ik heb het ergens verlegd.
Bapak Ibu, iki uga Pak Erik Rahmat Murtabat, Pak Duta Besar saja wis bergabung dengan kita juga.
Oh. Iya.
Pak Erik.
Iya. Enak wonge nang kene barang.
Ono Pak, sugeng sonten Pak Erik.
Oke. Iya. Saya kira tuh mari wonge pisan.
Wis Pak.
Wis waras ya.
Iya. Oh ya, aku bunga banget. Krungu. Nggih.
Benar,
So,
Pak Erik tuh. Ini.
Ape-ape.
Selamat sore, Pak. Selamat sore.
Selamat sore, Pak Erik.
Ya.
Sugeng
Oh,
sonten.
nggih bunga krungu suarane Pak Murtabat.
Oke, ini mungkin sudah kelewat 10 menit, kita bisa mulai ya.
Nggih.
Iki sing melu lagi 138, kingko akan bertambah terus. Kita mulai dulu ya aja, ya Pak ya. Yuk Ibu, nyuwun izin.
Nggih.
Pak Erik, KB, aku nyuwun izin Mbak Siske, Mbak pembicara, ini dimulai nggih.
Nggih, monggo Pak, monggo. Nggih, monggo.
Nggih.
All right. Good afternoon to our respected guests. The International Webinar Youth Javanese Diaspora event, Digital Storytelling, Connecting Javanese Roots Through Digital Platforms, starting soon. For all the audience, please turn on the camera and turn off the microphone, except when asking in the question and answer session later. All right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
The Honorable Head of PUI Javanologi UNS, Professor Sahid Teguh Widodo, SSM Hum PhD, our respected speakers, as well as all the international webinar participants who have spared their precious time to attend this international webinar. Welcome to the International Webinar Youth Javanese Diaspora with the theme Digital Storytelling, Connecting Javanese Roots Through Digital Platforms, presented by the Center of Excellence Javanologi, Universitas Sebelas Maret, Surakarta, Indonesia. In celebrating International Women's Day on the 8th of March, today we have 5 extraordinary women as the speakers and the moderator who will share their perspective on the youth Javanese diaspora. There are Morgan Djotaroeno, Christa Wongsodikromo, Mutia Putri Meilania, and Esther Poro. And I, Anindya Aulia Fikri Dharmawan, will be master of ceremony and the moderator for our event today. Before starting this event, I will read the rules of the event first. 1. Participants are requested to mute the microphone at all times except in the Q&A session. 2. The committee has the right to remove participants who interfere with the event. 3. The Google Attendance Form link will be distributed at the end of the webinar. Participants are encouraged to attend the whole webinar. 4. E-certificate will be sent to the email according to the email address submitted in the Google Attendance Form. Please recheck your full name and email address to avoid problems regarding the
e-certificate details. 5. Participants who are unable to join the Zoom meeting can also follow the event via YouTube Live on the PUI Javanologi UNS YouTube channel with the same rights. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, before entering the main event, now we will sing together the national anthem of Republik of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya.
Indonesia tanah airku,
tanah tumpah darahku, sana aku berdiri jadi pandu ibuku. Indonesia kebangsaanku, bangsa dan tanah air. Marilah kita bersatu, Indonesia bersatu. Hiduplah tanahku, hiduplah negeriku, bangunlah jiwanya, bangunlah badannya untuk Indonesia Raya.
Indonesia
Raya, merdeka
yang
Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya.
Matur nuwun.
The next agenda is welcoming speech. The welcoming speech will be delivered by the head of PUI Javanologi UNS, the Professor Sahid Teguh Widodo SSM Hum PhD. The time is yours.
Terima kasih Mbak Anindya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Matur nuwun kabeh sing wis ono ing webinar iki. Before the speech that I will deliver is this event, let's together always thank God for all His blessing and guidance to us. Especially I want to say terima kasih Pak Erik Murtabat sudah bergabung dengan kita. Gabung karo awake dhewe kabeh lan kabeh ono peserta kabeh ndedonga muga-muga Pak Erik kembali sehat lagi, sehat maneh, kuat maneh, iso dolan ning ngendi maneh Pak. Javanologi selalu merindukan kabeh sedulur-sedulur saka Suriname, saka Londo, saka ngendi wae iso teko. Okay, first of all, I would like to thank and welcome for the 4 speakers at this webinar, namely Mbak Morgan, Ms. Morgan Djotaroeno from the Netherlands Javanese Diaspora, Ms. Christa Wo-Diomo, independent researchers, guest lecturer at the University of Michigan, and also on the JID-NL board. Ms. Mutiara Putri Meilania, Utrecht University student and New Media and Digital Culture Master Degree Program, and Ms. Esther Poro, Assistant Business Unit Manager and Java Trail Coordinator, Clevia Academy and Clevia Park in Suriname. I would like to thank special for Javanese in Diaspora Netherlands for supporting this event. I must not forget to thank all the international webinar participants, which consists of 9 countries in total: Indonesia, the Netherlands, Suriname, the United States of America, Australia, China, Turkmenistan, Syria, and Chad. Also, to the entire event organizing committee, PUI Javanologi Universitas Sebelas Maret, very thanks to you all. And I want to say that this webinar event is actually a follow-up to our joint effort to continue in collaborating with our partners and colleagues at in the country, Indonesia, and abroad. PUI Javanologi UNS considers this event to be development of the webinar we held last December between Javanologi UNS and JID-NL Netherlands. This webinar coincides with International Women's Days. So it is not surprising that all the speakers are women. So maybe you ask me why all the speakers are women, because it is the same time with International Women's Day today. There are extraordinary women who will convey their respective experience. And of course, we hope that the information that will be conveyed will be very useful for all webinar participants. And the basic foundation is the feeling and desire to develop and improve the quality of understanding between us all. Yeah? We also hope that that event like this can be held regularly every 3 months or 6 months, is depend us, with a format that increasingly organized and better planned. We believe that relationships, getting to know each other, understanding each other, and respecting each other will give birth to great work and great strength in a future that look increasingly challenging. This webinar event and continuing in subsequent webinars will open our insight into the spirit of working together, treating together, and improving the quality of our life together in the future. Distance is no longer an obstacle because it can be resolved with enthusiasm, strong desire, understanding each other, and quality program planning, so that it will not only strengthen relation between arts and culture, but also have an impact on the growth, a new force in the fields of research, maybe in education, economic, social engineering, technology, and so forth. So I want to say once again, I would like to convey my feeling of happiness and great hope that this event will run smoothly and stimulate the birth of new quality ideas. From Solo, welcome to the first International Youth Javanese Diaspora webinar. We hope that the participant can follow the seminar from start to finish. And the committee will also give an international certificate to each participant. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Professor Sahid Teguh Widodo, for the warm welcome to all the webinar participants. Now, before move on to the main event, I request to all participants to turn on your cameras for the group photo session. The committee will take screenshots from the first slide until the final slide. All right, so we have 7 slides, right? We'll start from the first slide. Slide 1, are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Nice. Next, moving to slide 2. Slide 2, are you ready? 1, 2, 3. All right. Next, slide 3. 1, 2, 3. Moving to slide 4. 1, 2, 3. Next slide, slide 5. 1, 2, 3. Next, slide 6. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. And now the last slide. 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you very much. Well, now the time has come for us to start the main event, which is the presentation session by the speakers. The first speaker is Morgan Djotaroeno. Morgan Djotaroeno is a 23-year-old consultant in the field of business information management and technology. She holds a master's degree in information management and graduated from Tilburg University in 2023. She is the oldest daughter of 2 Javanese Surinamese parents who migrated to the Netherlands from Suriname when they were young. Morgan was born and raised in Rotterdam, the second largest urban city in the Netherlands. She enjoys her work, and outside of that, she likes to read, watch movies, make a ride on her bike in the city, be with friends or family, or work on side projects like this webinar. And without delaying any longer, let's welcome the first speaker. Your time is 20 minutes from now. The time is yours.
Thank you. I will share my screen first, if you give me a minute. Is my screen visible, my presentation?
Yes, Pak
all
Morgan.
right.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, Pak Said. Welcome everyone to my presentation. My name is Morgan Djotaroeno. Thank you for introducing me. And the name of my presentation is Javanese Identity in the Netherlands, Past, Present, and Future. And I've chosen a theme of personal narrative, so I will tell some things from my perspective, so through the lens of a younger generation. So what I want to talk about today is first my personal journey and my identity in terms of our culture. Second, I want to show some prominent cultural characteristics like food, tradition, and other things we have here in the Netherlands in my own perspective. And at the end, I want to say some things about the past, present, and the future, how I see it. But firstly, another introduction. Like I said, thank you for introducing me here by a fast introduction again. My name is Morgan. I was born on July 25th, 2000. Like she said, I graduated with a master's degree in information management from Tilburg University. Currently, I am a consultant. Most people would describe me as a calm, compassionate, and interested person. As for my hobbies, I'm currently very much into reading. I really like listening to music, watch movies. I also like model building. There are some examples where I build planes. I really enjoy doing that. If the weather is nice, I really like to be on my bike here in the city. And otherwise, you can always find me behind my desk doing something, reading something, doing side projects like this webinar, for example. And I was indeed born in the Netherlands. I'm the daughter of two Javanese Surinamese parents, more about that later. And I can be called a Rotterdammer. That's someone who is from the city of Rotterdam. I was born and raised here. It's like a little New York. I think it's the best city in the country. So this is where I live. And now I want to start with my first chapter. So my personal journey and identity. And I want to start off with showing this picture because the picture speaks more than 1,000 words. A lot of people in the Netherlands ask the question, what is the relationship between these three countries? So Indonesia, the Netherlands, and Suriname. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't really know the history behind it because somewhere it makes sense. It's a dark page in the history of the Netherlands, but usually it starts with this question for me personally, but also for other young Javanese people. When we ask this question, what is the relationship between these three countries? We start to dig deeper in our history. So to continue on my personal journey, a few short things about my life, how my life is in the Netherlands. I am the daughter of Carmelita Pakimin and Johan Djotaroeno. Both of my parents moved from Suriname to the Netherlands when they were young. My father was a little boy. My mom was a teenager when she came here. My upgrowing, I am the oldest. I have 4 siblings. As for my family dynamics, how I will describe it shortly, I would describe my family dynamics as pretty calm. I grew up in a calm family, a very modest family. I grew up irreligious, so most Javanese people are Muslim. My parents are not religious. They always gave me the space and freedom to research that myself. Another characteristic of my family dynamics is that we spend a lot of times with other family members. So Javanese culture is very family oriented, I would say. As for the language, the Javanese language was unfortunately never taught to me. My parents speak it a bit, but usually with the elders. And here's a picture, 2 pictures of me and my siblings. Like I said, I'm the oldest. And about living in the Netherlands, so how is it to live as a young Javanese person in the Netherlands, especially in a Western country, in a larger city like this? I would describe life in the Netherlands as modern, stable, and well organized. I have to say, for young people, there are a lot of possibilities, not only educational, but also in terms of work, creative opportunities, and especially in cities like Rotterdam, it's very diverse. That's the thing I really like about the city. Here's another example of Rotterdam on the right and an example of Erasmus University in this city. And as for the Javanese Surinamese community, how I have experienced it is that the community here in the Netherlands is not very large, at least not as large as some other ethnic communities in the Netherlands. It's also not as large as in Suriname. So I would describe it as a small but a very close-knit community, a very warm and harmonious community. More about that later. So to continue on my personal journey and identity, in terms of our Javanese culture, I would describe the path from experiencing your culture to self-exploration. At least that's how I have experienced it in my own life. And I think as well for a lot of other young Javanese people in the Netherlands. So I would describe 4 main phases when you experience your culture, and that is you're experiencing when you're young, when you're a child. Then you start to become aware of your culture, what's happening around me. You start to become curious about your culture. And then when you get older, you proactively explore it on your own. So what do I mean by this? What I mean is that when you experience your culture, it's usually passive. So you observe the traditions, customs, and norms without actively asking questions. Often you don't really care that much because it makes sense, you're young. And some examples are the basic words your family uses, or how are the dynamics in your family and your family members. When you become a little bit older, you start to become aware of the different aspects of the culture around us. So you recognize the diversity and the complexity of the culture. You ask questions about what does it mean, this tradition or this custom. Some examples are you start to become aware of recurring events like a Selamatan, or some practices which are a bit extraordinary, like Jarang Kapang, or the traditional clothing, you become aware of it and the rich variety of foods we have in our culture. When you become curious and older, you actively seek out more information. You ask questions to gain a deeper understanding. So some vital questions you ask are like, why was the language not passed on to us? Or you have conversations with family members, or you read books, or you watch videos. And then maybe the best phase is when you start to proactively explore, because that curiosity has already passed. So you take lead in your cultural journey of discovery. You do your own research, you immerse yourself in the culture, you participate in activities and events to develop a deeper understanding and connection with the culture. Some examples are traveling, whether it be Suriname or Indonesia, and you really want to connect with people of a Javanese descent. You really have the wish to build a community. As for myself right now, so my personal journey, I would say that I have been a lot of times in these two phases. I would say the last year and a half. And besides talking to family members, it can manifest in like reading books. So the Javanese people in Suriname society, or going to readings. This was a really good reading, by the way. It was about Javanese women. Going to Muthia, delving into your history. What has happened exactly? How does it make you feel? Again, delving more into your history. Or most beautiful, going to Indonesia by yourself. So that was a bit about my personal journey. Now I want to say some things about the cultural characteristics or footprints we have here and how I experienced them in the Netherlands. So how I would describe Javanese family, people, our culture is, we're very modest. We are very family oriented. We want to be a lot of times with family. We respect the elders. That can manifest in different ways. For example, you go first, or always addressing elder people with 2 words. We support each other a lot of times. We have a big sense of hospitality. I really admire that, by the way. There's a large essence of spirituality and religion in our culture. So despite that, despite that I am not religious, you can still see the essence of the spiritual part of our culture. I have to also mention that Javanese people in our family, we do avoid conflicts a bit. However, we do have a kind heart and we are very forgiving. So these are the most prominent cultural characteristics, how I've experienced it. So some cultural footprints we have and still leave here in the Netherlands, food and traditions. This is an example of my grandma when I went to a party with her where there was a lot of gamelan. I'm not sure if you can hear the music, but
song?
Would you hear the music? But if you couldn't, it's an example of what the dance we do here and the parties we have. It was a very nice moment. Another example is my other grandparents. They have a warung here in Rotterdam. Behind them, you see the Surinamese flag. So we sell Javanese and Surinamese dishes like nasi goreng, gado-gado, tempe, etc., etc. My favorite dishes personally are the snacks. So I really like pisang goreng and satay, my favorites. Another thing which I really admire a lot is the Selamatan we do here when different important occasions happen, especially the symbolism about a Selamatan. So some pictures here, example of my grandfather. Some other examples that are important to me. My grandma, she recently went to Suriname. She opened a boutique there where she sells traditional clothing. Here is a picture of my mother when she got married. You see her with her best friend helping her. She got married in the Javanese way. At home, we have wayang dolls. Another example of my father when he got married, also in his traditional clothing. And when my mother moved to the Netherlands, she joined a Javanese dance group. You can see it here on the pictures, and they did traditional dances from Solo. So that was the part about cultural characteristics. Now I want to move on to my last part, and I want to start it off with a quote. So people without the knowledge of their past history, culture, and origins is like a tree without roots. And yes, that is true. And I do want to mention that here in the Javanese youth, including me, we have certain fears, but also willingness to learn the culture. And we have certain thoughts that resonate with all of us. And I can show you some examples. So what we think is that I really want to preserve my heritage because it feels like I'm missing a part of myself, but it's overwhelming knowing where to start. Or it's hard to connect with my culture when I'm surrounded by so many other influences. That's true, especially in a Western country like the Netherlands. Or I'm afraid that if I don't pass on my cultural knowledge to the next generation, it will disappear completely. And the last example, I worry that if I don't make an effort to learn about my culture now, it will be lost forever. So all these thoughts we have as a youth here is very valid. But here comes the good part, is that in the Netherlands, if I take the Netherlands as an example, the Javanese Surinamese community is very diverse. And it's a richness in this community. So you see me here in the middle, and surrounding me are people I know in my life who I cherish a lot. And most of these people have a Javanese mother, Javanese father. Some of these people in the picture only have a Javanese mother, but that doesn't make them less Javanese. The beautiful thing is that we all have something in common, and that's our ancestry, our lineage. So what I'm trying to say is I want to use my network as people who can help each other, support each other, or learn each other new knowledge and help passing that on. And we have the power to do that, which I think is beautiful. So to continue on the past, present, and future, first, I want to say some things about the past. I think that understanding your past is important because it strengthens your identity and you gain a deeper understanding of your culture. Furthermore, our ancestors, they have laid a foundation, and that foundation is a basis that forms our values, our traditions. So what do we do and why do we do it? And what are our beliefs? It passes on from generation to generation. And furthermore, when you also understand your past, you can take pride in your identity and your heritage. So you can move on when you don't understand the past first. Now to the present and future. First, what I can say about the present, my present life self as a young person. I really love to look at sources or other people and places for me to express that curiosity and that exploration, what I already mentioned in the past. So never stop being curious, never stop exploring, whether that's on your own or together with other people. And I do have to say, in my current life, I have some fears as I grow older, because I already told you about the Javanese community in the Netherlands. We're not a very large community. My fear is that when time passes on, that community only becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, at least in the Netherlands. It's not the same how it must be in Suriname. You know, we're a fairly small community here. And I also fear that my generation of Javanese young people, they don't express as much as value on our culture like the previous generations. And somewhere it makes sense because our previous generations, they grew up in different times. They went from Suriname to a country in Europe. It was a completely different period. So somewhere it makes sense. But the fear I have is that there will be a gap when time passes on. So what I want to prevent from happening is that there will be a gap between the older generations and the younger generations, as in a gap between the culture we give on, the knowledge we share, etc., etc. So to prevent that fear from happening, I have some aspirations. And my aspirations for the future are, despite that I was born in the Netherlands, I've been to Suriname one time, I've been to Indonesia one time, but there's always an open door to Java, Indonesia. And that open door gives so many opportunities, and I never want to stop grabbing those opportunities. So that connection is important. I would also love to exchange information and experiences with others, whether it's this country or another country. And despite that we have communities in the Netherlands, Javanese communities, in my own personal experience, I see that those communities are mostly hosted by the older generations, and the relation with younger people is not as strong as I hope to be. So because I'm a young person, I see a lot of digital opportunities because I'm very present online. There are so many digital opportunities that I cannot even pick which one could be the best. But the beautiful thing about those opportunities is that you can go beyond geographical borders. So not only look at the Netherlands or Suriname, but also how do young people in Java live? How is their life there? Could we inspire and help each other in one way or another? And I also want to encourage myself and other young Javanese people here in the Netherlands to learn the language. And most important to say is that small steps really matter, even if it's just a small step every day. And it all comes down to my aspiration that we do a collective effort to preserve our culture. And again, small steps matter, but never stop being curious, never stop going to explore about your culture, whether it's alone or in a collective effort. So that was my story, and hereby I would like to end my presentation. I would like to thank everyone for coming to the webinar, and also thank you, Pak Zahid and Mas Kusuma and Mas Faris for supporting me. So thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you to the first speaker who have provided rich material and opened up our knowledge on the youth Javanese diaspora, especially from her perspective as a Javanese Surinamese. Her personal journey, the cultural characteristics of the youth Javanese diaspora, to the footprints and how it will be in the future for the youth Javanese diaspora community. I personally very invested about this presentation, and I hope we can meet here in the Javanologi to discuss this material further. All right?
Yes, thank you.
For the participants who want to ask questions, you can write questions from now on by writing the question in the chat box. Also, write to whom the question is being asked to. We will choose questions that will be answered by the speakers and save it for later in the Q&A session. All right. Next, let me introduce the second speaker. The second speaker is Christa Wo-Diomo. Christa Wo-Diomo is fourth-generation Javanese Surinamese diaspora and lives in the Netherlands. She is an independent researcher, speaker, and community organizer. She specializes in Dutch colonialism and the topics of intergenerational trauma and identity, and is currently the board member of Javanen in Diaspora Netherlands. Let's welcome the second speaker. Your time is 20 minutes from now. The time is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for your introduction. And thank you, everyone, for participating. My name is Christa Wo-Diomo. I was born and raised in the Netherlands. And before we begin, I would like to express my gratitude to the Javanologi department of UNS for facilitating this event, and also to all the speakers who are contributing to this important webinar. I'm a fourth-generation Javanese Surinamese, which means that my great-grandparents were born in Indonesia and shipped to Suriname. And I will refer to my ancestors who arrived in Suriname as the first generation. So in my family history, many relatives have been separated from their families, and they have gone on personal journeys. Each one has their own story, and for my own story adds to the search for my ancestors. Next slide, please. To explain my diaspora identity, I will go back 3 generations using a timeline. So firstly, my great-grandparents arrived in Suriname in 1928 and 1930, and the pain of leaving their homeland and family has affected the generations afterward. And to maintain clarity, I will trace this narrative through the lineage of my paternal grandmother. About 30 years later, my father and my uncle were born, and they are twins. And they grew up in difficult circumstances. My uncle was raised in a boarding school while my father was adopted by a Dutch Christian missionary couple. My father grew up entirely without Javanese culture and was even given a new first and last name. So Wongsodikromo is not actually my birth name. I was born with Soeters as my last name, which is the last name of my father's adoptive parents. And I would like to point out here that transracial adoption like this, where you are moved to another country, is a very traumatic event. It's traumatic for the family left behind and for the child who is separated. And the loss of culture combined with the loss of family can have psychological consequences. Because if you've lost the connection with yourself, how can you build a connection with others, even with your own children? My father couldn't provide the love that I needed. And I understand that this is caused by adoption trauma because he has lost everything, his entire identity. A few years later, in 1965, my grandmother's brother traveled to Indonesia for his studies. He also began searching for the family of our first generation. And he found his brother in Prachimantoro in Wonogiri, and his parents' house was still standing there. Next, the search continued for the reunion of my father with his twin brother and mother. In 1981, they were finally reunited. I'm deeply grateful to my uncle for searching for my father and restoring the connection. In 2007, my uncle continued his search for his father, who is my grandfather. It was a big shock for the family to discover that my grandfather had 2 more sons. And despite the emotions, we were accepted and warmly welcomed into the family. And I greatly admire them for that. In the meantime, I was born in the 90s. I grew up with 2 traumatized parents in a household marked by physical and emotional neglect, intertwined with addiction and substance abuse. So my parents were unable to care for me, and I later grew up in care homes and foster families. So when I reflect on my family history, I see the same pattern recurring in every generation. My ancestors also grew up in care homes and foster families from the moment my family arrived in Suriname. When trauma is left unaddressed, it gets passed down to the next generations. And as an adult, I came to understand that I carry the intergenerational trauma of the first generation displaced to Suriname. And this realization helped me forgive my family. I felt that I could never fully assimilate into Dutch society, or that I belong to a family, or that I belong to a culture. And in terms of International Women's Day, I also want to point out that this is a very vulnerable position for a woman because people can more easily gain power over you. So after the care homes and foster families, I ended up in a women's shelter where I had to hide from an abusive relationship. So this is a lonely journey on earth, but I also found strength in it. The world is an unsafe place for a woman, but through this lonely journey, I gained the courage to travel alone to Suriname and Indonesia with few resources. I couldn't find my place in the Netherlands, so I went to the families and descendants of the first, second, and third generations. Next slide, please. My first visit to Indonesia was spontaneous, unplanned, and completely unprepared. Without knowing a word of Indonesian and without any expectations, my arrival there turned out to be an incredibly spiritual experience. Almost immediately, I found answers to questions I hadn't even realized I had. During that initial week, I felt like I couldn't act. I could only observe and look around me. When I explained my Javanese Surinamese background, people were surprised and welcomed me back and said I was Indonesian. I thought I wasn't born here, neither was my family. I haven't done anything for this country, and yet they think I belong here. I have never experienced this in my life. In the Netherlands, I am not considered Dutch, while in Suriname, I am not considered Surinamese, but I'm considered Dutch. Nowhere else in the world have I experienced such acceptance as in Indonesia. It took me years to process this new definition of myself. In Indonesia, I also embarked on a quest to find my family. The photo on the left shows my relatives in Wonogiri. They still live in the same place that my great-grandparents left behind. It was a spontaneous and emotional encounter because they didn't know me and they hadn't expected me visiting. It was very meaningful to visit my ancestral grounds, so I took the soil from the ground where their house once stood, and I took it home with me. I also had many vivid dreams at night when I arrived in Central Java. This still continues to happen every time I return to Central Java. After I wake up from a vivid dream, I awaken with a sense of inner peace regarding certain aspects of life in the Netherlands, and I still feel that peace. The dreams I have in Indonesia are very therapeutic. After visiting Central Java, I visited the Rodebrug Surabaya community in the City of Heroes. They do reenactments where they depict events from the Indonesian Revolution. They asked me to participate in a play, but I was very shy. And eventually I embraced the role of an Indonesian freedom fighter. At this community, I could embody the Indonesian heroes who fought for freedom from the system that caused my family to be separated and sent to Suriname. It felt like I could liberate myself and my family through acting in the play. It was a special experience to me to be allowed to have these heroes and role models, because in the Netherlands, these heroes are considered terrorists. When I returned to the Netherlands, I finally gained the ability to do meditation, because that was something I wasn't able to do before. I needed less recognition and validation from others, and I felt more accepted and didn't need to seek acceptance from others as much. Next slide, please. Shortly after, I traveled to Suriname, and I questioned what Suriname now meant to me. Now I have this strong connection to Java. I certainly didn't feel the same connection to Suriname as I did to Indonesia in terms of the connection I felt with the land. However, I did discover fragments of myself in Suriname that I couldn't find in the Netherlands or Indonesia. But that's more culturally wise. And the love I feel for Suriname is because I have some very special family members living there. My family didn't know about our existence before, and it shook their world when they found out. But their hearts are so warm that they fully accepted and welcomed us without a doubt. And Suriname is where my ancestors are born and buried. So I brought the soil I took from the ground at my family's home in Indonesia to Suriname, and I took this soil to the gravesite of my great-grandparents and mixed it with their soil. Since my great-grandparents could never return to Indonesia, I brought Indonesia to them. Next slide, please. So in 2022, I visited Indonesia twice. I spent most of my time with my family in Wonogiri to build a relationship with them. And I didn't bring a translator with me this time. I speak little Indonesian and Javanese, and I don't speak Dutch or English, so we had to communicate through our hearts. In the kampung of my ancestors, I felt an overwhelming connection to the land that I couldn't experience anywhere else. Despite the language barrier and being separated by generations in time and oceans in distance, we still remained family of each other. I believe if your soul is Javanese, the connection to your ancestral land will remain strong. Most of my family members are farmers. They cultivate their crops on the land of my great-grandfather. It was an indescribable feeling to live on my ancestral land. Breathing the air, eating the rice and fish, bathing in the river water, and gazing at the same stars and mountains that my ancestors once did. The world that seemed so empty to me suddenly became filled with beauty everywhere. I returned to the Netherlands with an unbearable homesickness that no one could understand. I came back and I couldn't explain what I experienced in Indonesia. My family in Wonogiri had opened my heart, and I felt immense repentance that I had never believed in a creator. In the past, I had lived with a Palestinian family who introduced me to Islam, but my heart remained sealed at that time. I later returned to Indonesia for the second time that year, and I took the Shahada there. In 2019, I traveled to Indonesia with the intention to reconnect with my identity, but I never expected to find my religion there. I feel like I have a good fundament now to continue my way in learning more about Javanese culture. I feel immensely grateful to my family and everyone in Indonesia who welcomed me so warmly, because kindness opens hearts, and the connection to the ancestral land made me realize that everything has an origin, and I no longer need to wander in the world. During the period when I took the Shahada, I also changed my last name to Wongsodikromo. I mentioned earlier that Wongsodikromo is my father's birth name, but that the missionaries gave him a different first and last name. The fact that these events happened simultaneously felt like a rebirth. Next slide, please. So through my travels, I have gained extensive knowledge about the significance of culture and the psychological effects of losing one's identity. I share this knowledge at the University of Michigan, where the story of belonging particularly resonates with the Indigenous, Afro-American, and Jewish students. I still have much to learn about Javanese culture. And when I returned to the Netherlands, I struggled to practice the things I have learned and developed in Indonesia. The reason we are losing the Javanese culture is not only due to migration, but also because not all cultural elements fit within the context of a new country. For example, what I miss are things like respectfully greeting our elders, such as placing their hands on our faces, or offering apologies, because this is seen as weakness and a submissive act in the Netherlands. When I apologize for something, people quickly tell me that I shouldn't do that, and it feels very awkward to not apologize sometimes. I feel like when people help you in the Netherlands, they often expect something in return. I also miss the small talk on the street without people expecting anything from you. I miss being able to smile at strangers, and I miss speaking at low volumes and letting silences fall in conversations. So in the Netherlands, I feel like I constantly have to force myself and make myself bigger. Otherwise, people will walk over you because they will think you are weak or not smart. So I miss the way how interaction works with people. And Indonesia, interaction with each other feels like a dance. And every dance is different because when two people come together, different energies and personalities are mixed through a harmonious dance. And I feel like there's none of that in the Netherlands. I feel like there's little room for differences. In the Netherlands, there's only one dance, and everyone must follow the same steps because harmony in the Netherlands is when everything is the same. So both countries have different concepts of harmony. This means that disagreeing with each other can lead to problems more quickly. But I also know the longing I feel will never be bigger than what my great-grandparents felt in Suriname. So after reconnecting with my Javanese identity, I also feel like the opposite of assimilation to Dutch culture is happening to me. I am now slowly losing my Dutch characteristics. I now often experience miscommunication with people, and I no longer understand sarcasm. So Dutch language contains a lot of sarcasm, a lot of eye contact and facial expressions, while in Javanese culture, it does not. And what I find scary in the Netherlands is that they assume you have a neurological disorder when you don't use these elements in your communication. Because not using sarcasm, eye contact, or facial expressions is, they will think you have autism. I found a world in Indonesia, but at the same time, I also feel like a tiger locked up in a zoo, in an unnatural environment. I've managed to break free from the cage, but could I really survive in my natural environment? Am I destroyed the way how I am socialized? My biggest dream is to permanently migrate to Indonesia, but I also know that I carry the Western and Caribbean culture within me, and I might always feel torn between three continents. I find it interesting how Indonesia views my identity. They see me as part of the Javanese diaspora. No matter which path led me to the Netherlands, I am a Javanese. But in the Netherlands, we see ourselves as Javanese Surinamese diaspora. And if I'm completely honest in my vulnerability here, I respect the hard work our ancestors did to preserve and pass down our culture in Suriname, and I will always spread awareness about what happened to our ancestors. But when I personally want to learn more about the Javanese identity, I go to Indonesia first, because I am now able to make that choice. I am the first generation not born under colonialism, and I have the opportunity to return to Indonesia, unlike my great-grandparents. This doesn't mean I'm denying Suriname. Suriname is in my heart, and I will always think about how we can further build the country and empower the people. I would like to thank you for listening to my story, and once again, the Javanologi Department of UNS for facilitating this event. I understand that my experience is certainly not representative of everyone in the diaspora, and I am looking forward to reflect upon and discuss the differences and similarities and how we can build a more harmonious world together. Thank you.
Thank you to the second speaker, who has provided a beautiful depiction of her perspective on the life of a Javanese diaspora, starting from her great-grandfather's arrival to the Netherlands until her own journey to finding her Javanese bloodline in Indonesia. Christa, thank you for telling us your story. It was really heartwarming. We heard you. I hope you heal from the things that you choose not to talk about. All right. Before we move on to the next speaker, we will watch a video about daily life in Solo City.
Going ahead to the middle of the day, there are some places that we recommend to experience the authenticity of Solo. People who come to Solo usually get attracted not only by its culinary, but also because of the Solonese batik. Batik is an Indonesian technique of wax process dyeing applied to the whole cloth. Some are then made into clothes and various fashion attire. Solo is one of the well-known places in Indonesia that has an original style in making batik. There is a place in Solo where you can learn the history of batik thoroughly, not only about Solonese batik but also Indonesian batik in general. This place is Dalam Harjonegara, the home of Indonesian batik maestro, also an arts and culture activist, Go Tixwan, or known better as Harjonegoro. Go Tixwan has a big role in the culture in the city of Solo and the development of batik in Indonesia. Indonesian batik is a work that has been successfully created by Go Tixwan. Inside Dalam Harjonegara, we can also find many artifacts left from the era of the Islamic Mataram Kingdom, such as ancient statues, buildings, and gamelan instruments. After learning some history of batik in Solo, you can also directly try and shop at several typical Solo batik shopping centers such as the Beteng Trade Center, or better known as BTC. BTC is a modern shopping center in Solo City which is known for selling various fabrics at low prices, including batik. To the north of BTC, there is Vastenburg Fort. It is also a historical place that is often used as a location for cultural events in Solo. This fort was built in 1745 on the orders of Governor-General Baron van Imhoff. The shape of the fort wall is in the form of a square at the ends of which there is a protrusion of space called seleko or bastion. Around the walls of the fort, there was a moat that served as protection with bridges at the front and back doors.
Okay. Next, we move on to the third speaker. The third speaker is Mutiara Putri Meilania. Halo, Mbak Muthia. All right.
Hi.
She is a Bachelor of Arts in Literature at English Department of Universitas Sebelas Maret and was graduated in 2021. She used to work as an intern at Javanologi UNS, then worked full-time for 2 years for a financial technology company FAZ in account operation or KYC or KYB specialist. She is originally from Sragen, Central Java, Indonesia, but currently living in Utrecht, Netherlands as an awardee of LPDP scholarship program, studying new media and digital culture for her master's degree at Utrecht University. Now let's welcome to the third speaker. Your time is 20 minutes from now. The time is yours.
All right. Thank you, Aulia, for the opportunity and for introducing me. Okay, good afternoon, everyone, in Western Indonesian time, and good morning from the Netherlands, because currently I happen to be in Utrecht. Now I'm going to share my experience as an Indonesian student in the Netherlands, specifically from a Javanese perspective, because I'm a Javanese myself, though unlike Mbak Morgan and Mbak Christa, I was born and raised in Indonesia. So yeah, I'm just like a Japanese that happens to live temporarily in the Netherlands for my master's degree. But I want to make it clear that this doesn't represent all Javanese people, whether Indonesian or Javanese from any origin. It's a casual session. My purpose here is to share my personal stories that I hope will provide insights into our differences, especially in terms of culture between Indonesia and Dutch culture, or between the Javanese culture that I experienced in Indonesia and within the Javanese diaspora community here. So maybe I will start with the 3 things that caught my attention. Next slide. Okay. So yeah, the 3 things that caught my attention during my first 7 months in the Netherlands so far. Firstly, the foods, and secondly, the weather, and thirdly, the people. So for the food, honestly, I didn't quite fancy a Dutch food that I bought the first time I got here, because it was either bland or too sweet. So that's why I kind of struggled to eat properly in the Netherlands in the first month I got here, because I wasn't a fan of Dutch foods, and I also had limited ingredients and cooking skills for Indonesian dishes. So I couldn't get myself Indonesian food and that my tongue is familiar with, but I also didn't want to get myself Dutch food, so I ended up not eating at all. But I'm kidding. I ate, but just not that much. But then after a few weeks after that, I guess I changed my mind. I think not all Dutch food tastes that bad to me. So I was invited to dinner by this Dutch family a few times, the Pierik family. And so far, the Dutch dish that I like the most is a stampot. Stampot with gehaktbal. I don't know how to, if I pronounce it right. Stampot, gehaktbollen. Stampot is like mashed potatoes with vegetables, and gehaktbollen are similar to bakso or meatballs, but larger and coarser in texture compared to regular bakso. I also enjoy one of their desserts, krentenbollen. So it's a bit, it's slightly different from oliebollen. Krentenbollen, yeah, I guess that's like the correct name, which is like odading in Indonesia, but with raisins and topped with like I don't know how to call it, but it's like white powdered sugar that makes it even tastier for me. And I really love it. I really like I realized, oh, I can enjoy that food as well. And after the dinner, we usually have this Bible session, because the family is Christian, but I'm not. But it's so nice to learn more perspective, not only culturally but also religiously. And then this is one habit that I really like from the Dutch family. After they have a dinner, they play board games for the quality time. And one of my favorites is Rumikub. Rumikub, yeah, I think that's the name. Rumikub, with some blocks like in the picture, if you can see them. So for the experience related to food and eating habit here, I found some differences. For example, like as much as I like stamppot and gehaktbollen, I feel that the spices used are not as strong as those we have in Indonesia. Well, they use similar spices like cinnamon, for example, but for the smell alone, you can tell how the smell is not as strong as Indonesian cinnamon. And that also applies to other cooking spices that we have here. When I tried to cook Indonesian food here, I went to the Asian supermarket and bought the spices that I needed. But I still felt that the resulting dish, the outcome didn't give the same taste vibe, even though the recipe was the same. So that's why some people always have this joke, but I hope it's not like really sensitive. So people sometimes say that this is what you got after hundreds of years of colonization. Well, I hope that doesn't sound offensive, but my Dutch friend even agree and laugh to this as well. So and also for the eating habit, we know we always have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which involve rice and side dishes. But when I see my Dutch friends having breakfast and lunch, they just eat bread or fruits, which for Indonesian, I'm pretty sure you will call it snacking instead of eating. And I was thinking, how could he survive the whole day with only that food? And I always think that I'm physically tinier, smaller, but I eat more than they do. However, for the dinner, they eat a lot of foods with a complete and like hearty menu. So it's kind of interesting to find about that. And secondly, the weather. One common thing that we share between Indonesia and the Netherlands is rain. Indonesia often experiences rain, and the same goes for here, but the experience I have with rain here is different. In Indonesia, rain is just normal, and the temperature is not too cold. Sometimes I even enjoy getting caught in the rain in Indonesia, and it doesn't bother me. But here, the rain feels much colder, multiplied by the wind, the Dutch wind. So that's a picture of me using an umbrella in the summer last year. Like, see, even in summer, it often rains here. I think it happens in all seasons. I don't know how many times I've broken my umbrellas because of the Dutch weather, because of the Dutch wind, which in my opinion is unpredictable, even though we have this forecast up, but it's still like, for me, it's unpredictable. The wind is so strong. So from this, I began to realize what the media means, what the internet means about people in four-season countries where their daily lives and moods highly depend on the weather. Like, look at my picture with a friend when it's sunny, I'm smiling wide. And it's quite easy to feel happy and alive when the weather is good. But when the weather is gray and gloomy, like it's not a good day. That's why I struggle a bit when I experienced winter for the first time last December. So I was very excited about the snow, experiencing winter itself. Wasn't as pleasant as I imagined, I guess, because firstly, I'm allergic to cold. Yeah, I'm allergic to cold. You heard it right. And secondly, I felt like I was hit by winter blues. Look, this is a picture of me playing in the snow for the first time. I was so happy that I had to experience a severe allergic reaction. My entire face, neck, chest, and hands swelled, itchy with hives. I even had difficulty opening my eyes because it's swelling. And I'm not showing the more severe reaction, allergic reaction pictures here because they are quite disturbing. But it was that bad. It was that bad to adapt to like the new weather, the weather that I'm not familiar with here. So I bought allergic medicine at the store only to find out that I was allergic to that medicine. I tried another brand and I was allergic to that one too. That's why the allergic reaction got worse. So I went to the GP, the doctor, for a checkup, which I struggle again because like the system is pretty different from Indonesia. So like I had to wait for a week to meet a doctor. But then I got the right medication. As you can see now, I've recovered. Hopefully it won't happen again. But during that allergic reaction, I couldn't leave the house for over 2 weeks because the temperature was below 0 and it potentially triggers my allergy again. And I also had permission not to attend the classes during that time. And it made me quite mentally stressed due to the lack of human interactions and then consistently gloomy and gray weather. So it was like a real combo situation for me. And from that, I highlight the difference in how I approach the situation and how the Dutch approach it. For example, like with the issue with rain, the Dutch seems not to be bothered much. When it rains, they continue walking, cycling, and doing their activities without seeking like shelter. Even during storms, they keep going as if nothing is happening. So the Pierre family, the one that invited me for dinner, told me, well, we are not made of sugar, so why be afraid of getting wet? So that's the Dutch principle that I always remember. I think biking and rain seems to be like an inseparable part of the Dutch lives. And the third, the people. Before heading to the Netherlands, I researched, of course, the characteristic of the Dutch people on the internet to prepare myself on how to interact with them. Like on the internet, often many people mention that the Dutch are very straightforward and may even come across as rude. Well, that might be true, but from the moment I got here until now, as I speak, I have not seen any Dutch person being impolite towards me. Their words are not as blunt as the internet claims, and the Dutch people I've met are kind and gentle and considerate and careful with their words. Even when they provide criticism and advice, I can see them making an effort to not to hurt my feelings. But indeed, there are still differences. I mean, it's in this case, I find similarities between my experiences in Javanese and Dutch environment, but there are still differences in some cultural practices that they find normal, but we might consider impolite. For example, like the tradition of opening birthday presents on the spot and expressing whether they like it or not. If not, they can ask for a different gift. But if this happened in Indonesia, people might feel deeply hurt. In Indonesian culture, gifts are usually opened when the giver is no longer there, and we are expected to express gratitude for whatever is given. But the Dutch people that I met, for the Dutch people that I met, it's pretty normal to like say directly if we like the gift or not, and we can like request a replacement for that. So it's pretty normal. Another example is the way people dress. In Indonesian campuses, there is a dress code, like no casual wear like t-shirt or sandals. So it has to be colored shirts, Meanwhile, here, I kind of felt a bit overdressed when the first time I went to the class because it's quite common to see students and professors wearing shorts and casual attire in the campus. And also the interaction between the students and the professor here is more equal, I guess. For example, like during breaks, they often join us students for coffee and chat like peers. And this is quite rare in Indonesia because students generally show great respect to their professors, and it creates a sense of formality and distance between them. But I think neither approach is better or worse, of course. I believe both cultures have their advantages and disadvantages, and I appreciate both in specific contexts. Actually, there are many differences in those categories that required me to adapt quickly, and honestly, it's not as easy as we imagine. But I'm grateful because we have a close historical connection, and it's not difficult to find Indonesian, especially Javanese diaspora here, who share a similar culture with me. So sometimes when I miss speaking in Indonesia or Javanese, I can meet them. So for example, last September, I guess, can you help me to move to the next slide? Yeah. Last September, I had the opportunity to join a meeting with Javanese diaspora in Netherlands. Thank you, Prof. Sahid, for inviting me. And there I learned a lot about Javanese diaspora, and I met many great people. Unfortunately, not all of their pictures are included here because I had difficulty finding the old picture in my phone. Don't know where they are. But the first picture is me with Prof. Sahid and Pak Carlo. He told me a lot about his kid. And then Bu Harriet, who speaks Indonesian really well. I was quite surprised. I heard a lot about her when I was an intern at Javanologi, so I was so happy that I finally got to meet her in person. Then Bu Kathleen, I think she's here also, who's very lovely and kind since the first time I met her. And Bu Danisha, who is very cheerful. I love her energy. Also Pak Suhirman, who's the same as Bu Harriet, who speaks Indonesian really well. And actually, there are many other Javanese diaspora figures like Pak Heng Garbin and Pak Johan, but I couldn't find the pictures yesterday. I'm so sorry. But I really had a great time meeting them all, especially Pak Johan as well, because I heard a lot about him when I was an intern at Javanologi. So finally got to meet these people, the people that I heard a lot when I was in university. One interesting at the meeting, I think was the food, and it's gonna be in the next slide. Can you help me, please? Thank you. I realized that even though we are all Javanese, some flavors were unfamiliar to me. The Surinamese spices have a distinctive taste that is a bit different from what I usually experience in Javanese cuisine in Indonesia. Many Indonesian foods that day, like traditional snacks, but that one dish that caught my attention was bara. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's bara. It looks like bakwan, but it's not. And nothing tastes like bakwan, trust me. Bu Danisha told me that it's not even a Javanese food, but more like Indian food. Yeah, more like Indian food. And the yellow sauce is not pineapple jam because I thought it was. It's made from yellow peppers with sea vines, very spicy. But of course, by Indonesian standard, it wasn't spicy at all. When I tried it, like, yeah, I can sense like a bit sour and spicy, but it's not that spicy. And yeah, I was very happy to see many Javanese traditional snacks that day. Bu Kathleen also cooked paella, if I'm not mistaken. Paella is a crispy snack made of flour and peanuts, and it tastes exactly like the one I usually eat at home. So it's safe to say that I felt at home that day. Like I felt home. So another thing that I learned that there was that not all Javanese diaspora can speak Indonesian. They only speak Javanese, Surinamese, and Dutch. Even the Javanese language they use is informal. It's similar to how it's used in Indonesia among younger or same age individuals. So when I spoke with this Javanese diaspora, honestly, I felt a bit uncomfortable because I had to speak in an informal language, which would be considered impolite in Indonesia when addressing older people. But I'm glad that the Javanese diaspora I met here were so understanding and they had no issues at all. If I spoke in informal Javanese, even the Kathleen said that's the only Japanese language taught by their parents and great grandparents. So yeah, it's okay to speak informal Javanese with this Japanese diaspora. And what's unique is that even when talking to them sometimes, I didn't fully understand what was being said because the Javanese language they use has mixed with other languages they speak, in this case Surinamese and Dutch. So there were some parts that I couldn't comprehend because they sometimes spoke in 4 languages at the same time, like Javanese, Dutch, Surinamese, and Indonesian, and it's possible to find them all in one sentence. So yeah, and that's why it's really interesting for me. And here is a picture of me and Kathleen again. Well, I was invited only to join the event, but I met her. I ended up helping the organizer of the event, like preparing for snacks and documentation. So it was fun because that's how we bonded and got to know each other. And the next time, Kathleen invited me to her big family gathering, the Djotaroeno family. Okay. So this is the family gathering of the Djotaroeno family. Once again, this was an event full of Javanese diaspora. But the difference this time was that they all came from the same family, the Djotaroeno family. Not everyone attending this event was Javanese. Some brought their Dutch partners or individuals from various ethnicities. Also, not many of them spoke Javanese like in the previous Javanese diaspora events. So most of the time I spoke English. And here I got to know and mingle with the younger members of the Djotaroeno family because I don't think I met young people a lot in the previous Javanese diaspora event, but at this time in this family gathering, I met a lot of like young Javanese diaspora from the Djotaroeno family, such as Rianto and Royani, the son and daughter of Kathleen, as well as their cousins like Quentin, Kiara, Kenny. Yeah, they all look Indonesian, but they don't speak Indonesian or Javanese at all. I think they only speak Dutch and a little bit of English. And I was so delighted to see many people wearing batik and kebaya at this event. The younger ones help organize the event and prepare for the food. It reminds me of Javanese tradition in Indonesia, like nginom during any parties and any other celebrations, because the young people wear batik and they help like serving foods and preparing for the food, like it's pretty much like nginom. I also enjoy Javanese foods that day, like rice, chicken, bakmi, and satay. But unfortunately, I was a bit late that day, so I missed many activities like pocho-pocho dance, karaoke, and family storytelling session by Kathleen. But after that, Kathleen invited me to visit her home. And at her house, I found many old family photos of Kathleen family. And Royani and Kathleen were very excited to share the stories behind those pictures with me. Kathleen shared the history of her family, starting from the time when her grandmother left Indonesia to work in Suriname, and until he met Pak Jensen, and getting married and having 2 children. And there were photos of Bu Kathleen as um, as a kid, raised by her mother and aunt. Also, I guess pictures of Kathleen's parents, her wedding picture with Pak Jensen, and pictures of Royani and Rianto as babies and as they grew into teenagers. And I got to learn more about the life of Javanese diaspora here through the Kathleen's family. The Kathleen also showed me some documents, I guess, in the next slide. Yeah, and these are like documents of her family's historical evidence. There is a family tree of Ponium Raja Santono and work registration cards when they were sent to Suriname for the first time, and some kind of old family cards, or in Indonesia, kartu keluarga, and this is like the kind of kakak or kartu keluarga that that Javanese people and Suriname had back then. There's also information about the ship that carried them, where they used to live. It's around Wonosobo, Semarang, Rembang, Tuban, or in Juno village, which I don't know where it is, but perhaps if you know any families that may be affiliated with Raja Santono, especially in the mentioned areas, you can let me or Bu Kathleen know. And there is an interesting fact that I learned from Bu Kathleen as well, that Mbah Ponium didn't actually have a last name. So Raja Santono wasn't a name inherited from birth, but the government later required everyone to have a last name. So only in the 1950s, if I'm not mistaken, Mbah Ponium adopted the name Raja Santono. So if you come across someone with the last name Raja Santono, you might want to contact Bu Kathleen. There is possibility that they are related. Okay, and then later, next, yeah, after sharing many stories about the family history of Javanese descent with Bu Kathleen, we enjoyed some cake and Indonesian food as well. Yeah.
Mohon maaf untuk memotong. I'm so sorry for intruding your presentation, but I think your time is already out.
Oh, okay. Can I have another 1 minute?
All right.
Okay. Thank you, Aulia. Okay. So yeah, after sharing my stories about the family history of Javanese descent with Bu Kathleen, we enjoyed cake, and we had the Taptus Lubike Festival, like the picture in the middle, that's Taptus Lubike Festival. Like it was a new experience for me as well, because I was so happy to watch the annual marching band performance. And there were marching bands from Rijnsburg, Rotterdam, Lubike, and Leiden. And yeah, the picture, look at us. Despite the rainy night, we had so much fun. With Bu Kathleen, Pak Jansen, Rianto, and Royani, along with other Raja Santono family. And yeah, special thanks to Rianto and Quinton, who picked me up that day because I thought I was lost in Slovak. So yeah, that's my experience as an Indonesian student, particularly Javanese, living in the Netherlands. Though it's not long since I got here, I've learned a lot and met kind of wonderful people like Javanese diaspora in the Netherlands. And besides visiting Bu Kathleen, I'm also looking forward to visiting other Javanese diaspora members such as Bu Harriet and Pak Suhirman, Pak Johan, and Pak Henggarbin, who have actually invited me since a long time ago, but I do apologize for not finding the right time yet. But I'll definitely visit sometime before I go back to Indonesia, I promise. Okay, thank you everyone for listening to my story. Fijne dag.
Thank you to the third speaker, who provided very interesting material about her experience studying in the Netherlands as a Javanese, and also how she met with diaspora families and learn about their family history. We wish you good luck in finishing your master's degree program and can't wait to meet you here back home. Once again, we are reminding the participants who want to ask questions to write their questions from now on by writing questions in the chat box. Also, write to whom the question is being asked to. We will choose questions that will be answered by the speakers in the Q&A session later. Now moving to the fourth and the final speaker is Esther Poro. She is an Assistant Business Unit Manager and Jawa Trail Coordinator at Clevia Academy and Clevia Park, Suriname. Her line of work in the Javanese Diaspora area includes coordinating the Jawa Trail, which acts in planning and conducting Jawa Trail-related events with a link towards Indonesian diaspora in both culture and business. Let's welcome the third speaker. Your time is 20 minutes from now. The time is yours.
Terima kasih, Mbak Aulia. Selamat sore, selamat pagi, goedemorgen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, para bapak-bapak, ibu-ibu, and everybody in the Zoom room. Next slide, please. Tepangaken, my name is Poredjo Esther Abigail. I was born in August 1990. I am a wife and a mother, and currently also the founder of Vision Business Wise and Fee. In daily life, I am also a Seniwati, also known as artistic culture bearer for Javanese culture, Indonesian especially, at KBRI Paramaribo concerning dancing and gamelan. And in 2014, I was crowned Miss Indramayu. I'm a proud Javanese diaspora in Suriname, the secretary of the IAX Alumni Club Suriname, and also the group leader of the line dance group Istika. Next slide, please. On the agenda, I have for you presented my time growing up, my personal journey, culinary, Indonesia as my second home, and a closing remark. Next slide, please. I come from a fourth-generation line of Javanese diaspora, with the first generation that immigrated from Indonesia to Suriname on August 1890, starting with Mbak Poredjo from Madiun and Bakar Somanawi from Banyumas. The third Javanese diaspora generation in Suriname are my mother and father, Ibu and Bapak Poredjo. In my personal point of view, while growing up, although the Javanese language Jawangoko and Djotaroeno were spoken at home, the family was not really familiar, neither active in conducting nor living up to specific nor cultural Javanese activities or traditions. That is, of course, in the case of my parents and me being raised by them. My parents know little up to not much about the Javanese culture, neither did they participate in it. The cause for that lay in the fact that although they grew up with the Javanese culture and tradition in their desa or kampung, they only experienced the Javanese culture and tradition from a distance in their living environment, and neither did they actively participate in it. And after that, Ibu and Bapa, they left the desa to live in the city, Paramaribo, to start working, start a family, and to start instructing their life. The city of Paramaribo was already modern and still with Dutch colonial influences, leaving little up to no space or possibility to conduct Javanese traditional culture. Next, please. Although concerning values and norms, my parents did teach me the Javanese customary norms seperti unga-ungo, such as politeness, talk politely and calmly, sit neatly, no legs up on the couch, let elderly people and honorary guests serve food first. When older people are in conversation, you have to make yourself scarce, and always peace and tranquility are the best. Next, please. Because of the connection with experiencing and actively participating and conducting Javanese cultural activities and traditions, primarily through the Indonesian embassy in Paramaribo, such as learning to dance at the age of 13 years old, I was able to learn dancing. Not only Javanese dances, but many more dances that are existing in the Republic of Indonesia. My first dance guru was Guru Bu Kadek Susena, and through her teachings, I fell in love with my Javanese roots and Javanese culture and grew the better understanding and connection with my ancestral land, Indonesia, especially Pulau Jawa. Later in 2011 until 2023, I became her dance assistant. And through dancing was I able to explore places, retrieve information, and felt more involved in the various and rich Javanese culture traditions and ceremonies and festivals. Since my 13th-year-old year until now, I am still an active dancer of KBRI Paramaribo, both as student and assisting wherever possible and needed. Next slide, please. Gamelan is also an important factor in my Javanese diaspora journey as Saniwati because it supports my musical connectivity through beats and rhythm to help better understand Javanese dances, spesial tarian klasik Jawa. Tetapi untuk saya, gamelan juga salah satu aktivitas untuk meditasi. Aku bisa bermain saron dan gong, tetapi aku lebih senang bermain gong. In the gamelan group Langgam Mardika, Bapak Gondo Sumarto Wibisono was my first gamelan guru, and he gave me the push into singing as well as the Pesinden or female gamelan singer in Langgam Mardika. Since 2018 or 2019 and until now, I am an active gamelan player and Pesinden of Langgam Mardika at KBRI Paramaribo. Next slide, please. Joining classes of Bahasa Indonesia and Poso Jawa at KBRI Paramaribo, I learned from my gurus Bapak Darmo Hutomo, Ibu Lisa, Bapak Rian Kromokardi, and Bapak Ngadimin, the languages Bahasa Indonesia and Poso Jawa. In my point of view, learning and understanding a language was a huge supporting factor in reading articles and books about Javanese culture in Indonesia and Suriname, watching movies and listening to music. But it was also very beneficiary in the conversations and networking. In my point of view, learning and preserving Javanese culture also starts with the language and mastering it, because through language, the knowledge transfer of our culture and tradition can take place. Next slide, please. In the year 2011, KBRI Paramaribo and Guru Bu Kadek Susena gave me the kesempatan to join the Indonesian Arts and Culture Scholarship. Upon arrival, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia welcomed us at Gedung Istana, and then we were divided into groups to our sanggar or art studio to learn Indonesian arts and culture. We could choose from 4 cities, namely Bandung, Solo, Surakarta, Surabaya, and Bali. Personally, I was in a dilemma because both my ancestors, their cities, Surabaya and Solo, were in the selection. After prayer and consultation with my parents, I chose for the city Surabaya and studied Seni dan Budaya at Sanggar Tidif Studio from Ibu Dias Tiarni. Being in Surabaya gave me the opportunity to connect with my great-grandfather, Mbak Poredjo, and got better acquainted with East Java culture that doesn't differ so much from the Javanese culture in Suriname. Being there also led into exploring places such as Mount Bromo, Malang, and Pantai Maduro. The program was then closed off with a big final show and stage performance named Indonesia Channel, where all participants from all 4 cities performed. Next slide, please. To enhance and improve the language, I joined the competition in Bahasa Indonesia in 2018 in the Lomba Pidato Bercerita Bahasa Indonesia bagi Penutur Asing in Jakarta, where I primarily entered through submitting my speech and storytelling in Bahasa Indonesia at the Indonesian Embassy in Paramaribo. After that, I got the acceptance to join the Lomba Pidato program in Jakarta. There I had to be tested through an exam in Bahasa Indonesia. Then I entered the discussion round, and after having succeeded, I entered into one group with Australia and Great Britain to debate in Bahasa Indonesia against the opponent group consisting of Malaysia, Japan, and USA. My group and I won as second place, obtaining silver. After this, we went and celebrate at Istana Presiden Republik Indonesia on August 17, which was a very wonderful and great experience. We also explored other places like Taman Mini and went to Sumatra Barat to get to know better and understand Padang culture. After the end of the Lomba Pidato program, I started a personal journey on my own and met with close friends, and I went to Solo and Yogyakarta because in my point of view, it was an opportunity after 7 years to return to my ancestral land. It is very heartfelt for me that every Javanese needs to visit Central Java, Solo, and Jakarta as well, because in my point of view, it is wajib. I went and visited Keraton Yogyakarta as well, which was very sacred to me. Also, being able to visit Candi Prambanan, watching Wayang Wong by full moon, and Candi Borobudur gave me a sense of true Javanese awareness. Unfortunately, I was not able to visit Keraton Mangkunagara in Surakarta, but inshallah, God willing, that is on my wish list. And then I will have also connected completely with the ancestral line of my mother's side, God willingly. Next slide, please. In the year 2011, I was the second awardee to join the Indonesian Arts and Culture Scholarship Program, also known as Beasiswa Seni dan Budaya Indonesia. And after me, 11 other participants went. And in 2019, we approached Bapak Kuslandinu in his point of view to start an alumni club with all awardees to be able to come together and preserve the seni and budaya which we learned in Indonesia through dance, through gamelan, cultural and social projects, and also possible cooperation with KBRI Paramaribo. For me personally, the EX Alumni Club is also a way of always showing respect, honor, and to be grateful to KBRI Paramaribo. And I am always ready to support and help where is possible and necessary concerning Seni dan Budaya Indonesia. Because this is a sign for me as a way to give back to the Republic of Indonesia and KBRI Paramaribo for everything that they have done for me in the past until now. Next slide, please. As group leader of the line dance group or Langka Dansa Group Istika, I and my fellow management team members and line dance members conduct line dance. It is mostly popularly known as Pocho Pocho, but the correct name and portrayal is line dance or Langka Dansa and not Pocho Pocho. Because Pocho Pocho is merely the name of a music or song on which the first time line dance was danced. Line dance was primarily introduced in Suriname by Bukadek Susena, and the line dance group is blessed to conduct our training at Aula Pancasila at KBRI Paramaribo. And through line dance, we strive for togetherness in a form of being friends of Indonesia, stimulating relaxation and fitness. We participate in the annual line dance extravaganza, also introducing and promoting Javanese music from Indonesia through line dance, dancing to Javanese music and with Javanese dance styles and movements, getting to know the music from Indonesia and sharing with others through line dance that Indonesia consists of more than just Java. Line dance is also danced on a large scale on Sasisuro during Japanese New Year or the Jawa Festa. Next slide, please. all over the world, many people will say that Javanese cuisine is very delicious. In Suriname, we can still find and still prepare typical Japanese dishes from our ancestors, such as pecel, santan, tumpeng, serundeng, jangan bening, sauto or soto ayam, nasi, nasi goreng, bami or bakmi goreng, gudangan or urap-urap, and also the snacks such as sate, apem, ketuk, lemek, klepon, mendut, kemplang, putu or putri ayu, and also the well-known bakabana, pisang goreng. It is also very important to mention that locally a slow but steady trend is developing where many youngsters in Suriname learn how to prepare the dishes and snacks from their parents and or grandparents, or they learn it via YouTube or Pinterest. And this positive development is slowly growing into a business mindset, such as the many business orders online or on Facebook. And the Javanese culinary dishes we can find at Sauna Market, the Pasar, for traditional and cultural purposes, and also at various warungs. Next slide, please. In my first point of view, how it feels to have a second home in Indonesia, I am fortunate, happy, privileged, and blessed, rich in cultural connection with the original and authentic source Java, Indonesia. And also I have access to a reverent source of cultural framework in the form of palate, dukuns, gurus, and specialists, and a supply of not only knowledge, but also instruments and or materials associated with the performance for cultural activities. Next slide, please. In my second point of view, having a second home in Indonesia is an imprinted identity on my spiritual journey because of better understanding of who I am, where I come from, and why I am this way. The past is my compass that guides me in the future direction I should take, taking the good things from the past with me, and if possible, I improve them. Must prevent or improve the less good things of the past. My Jawa ancestry is sacred or wajib. I'm having the best of both worlds. I am a born Surinamese Javanese who makes the best in the Republic of Suriname, but at the same time firmly holds on tight to the selendang batik kawung of her ancestors through gaining knowledge and wisdom, active participation, and sustainable preservation of my Jawa roots from Indonesia. I am a Javanese diaspora in Suriname. Next slide, please. Last but not least, I live by the following saying that although I am born in Suriname and have a Western schooling and upbringing, I still remember in the first place, aku iki wong Jawa. And therefore, wong Jawa ojo lali lan ojo hilang Jawane. Matur nuwun, terima kasih.
Okay, thank you to the fourth and final speaker who has provided very interesting material about her life as a Javanese diaspora in Suriname. We can see how the Javanese youths are growing up with some Javanese values and norms that we also apply here in Java. It is also an amazing thing knowing that in Suriname, we can see many youths are still participating in preserving Javanese culture, such as learning traditional dances, gamelan, and activities related to the Javanese language. And the next session is a discussion or Q&A session. In this session, we invite participants to ask questions by writing questions in the chat box and including to whom the question is being asked to. Here, I already decide the questions. So we're gonna have like 4 questions only for each speaker. So the first question is from Sabtuti Handayani to Morgan. So the question is, as a young woman of Javanese descent, do you have the intention to continue preserving Javanese culture, even though you will later marry a young man from Europe? Maybe you
To
can
answer that
this,
question,
Sherry.
it's a good question. and also an interesting question, because I personally, I do not want to have kids. And the chance is high indeed that how I will have a partner with a different background. So first of all, there are no kids to pass on your culture, but instead of focusing on the generations after me, I have, like I said, 4 siblings. And besides my siblings, I have a lot of family members, friends who I can share that culture with. So yes, I do have the intention to preserve the culture, but with the people around me. So hope that answers your question.
Thank you for answering the question. Maybe we can next to the next question. It's the question from Sevian. So the question is, to add to the previous question, how does one search deeper than the immigration documents of our ancestors? Maybe this question is for Mbak Christa. So
yes, so I think the information that has been passed down by our families. So my family, the brother of my grandmother, he found our family in Indonesia because he had his studies in Indonesia, and he was later also a minister of social affairs in Suriname. So he had a good social position in Suriname, and he was able to go to Indonesia only 30 years after the first generation moved to Suriname. And so this is not like a long time to, so there's a big chance to still find a family if they're still living there. And so I think that is a big, good possibility. But for right now, I don't know like any other strategic options.
Okay. I hope it answers your question, Sevian. Yes, Mbak Esther Poro.
Yeah, to complement Mbak Christa and the participants' question, for example, in Suriname, how I obtained information from my ancestors, we have the National Archive, National Archief in Suriname, where you could also try to visit them physically, but also online through the section of Javanese immigration. And kiro-kiro, if you know the year when they immigrated to Suriname or to the Dutch, you can find the information there also. I hope that helps.
All right, thank you, Esther Poro, for your answer. So maybe we can move on to the next question. The question is from Bill Kadarusman. This is for Muthia. Have you met or explored Dutch Indonesian community in Netherlands? These are the Dutch who were born and grew up in Indonesia, but were expelled after Indonesia gained independence.
All right. Thank you for the question. I think for the Dutch people that were born and raised in Indonesia, I haven't encountered their community much. Perhaps just 1 or 2 people that I've heard about from the people that I met here, but not. I think I haven't met them like directly. But most of the people I met here are Indonesian who were long ago expelled from Indonesia due to like specific political situation in 1965, and or we call it exiles here. And yeah, I met them I think like a few weeks ago, and they shared a lot of stories about that, how they spent decades in the Netherlands and eventually adopting the Dutch language. So they speak Dutch growing up, and eventually obtaining Dutch citizenship, and then until they died as Dutch. So I've also come across some native Dutch people who have lived in Indonesia for like a long time due to work, and they speak Indonesian fluently. However, they're not specifically the Dutch people that expelled from Indonesia after the independence. So I'm not really sure about that. But if there is information about them and how I can connect with them, it would be very interesting. And I'm honestly really curious about it as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you for interesting answer. And maybe we can move to the next question. It's the question from Bill Kadarusman again, but this is to Mbak Esther. Has Indonesian government ever extended citizenship to all Javanese in Suriname? Also, is there any desire from Javanese community to ask the Indonesian government to give them citizenship? Bill is personally fascinated by the Javanese people in Suriname.
Oke, terima kasih Bapak Bill. So far as I know, I am very carefully in answering that question. Perhaps not on large scale, but I suppose and I think that probably if a Surinamese gentleman or a Surinamese woman would consider marrying an Indonesian, I think that he or she could apply for Indonesian citizenship. As far as if the Javanese society in Suriname has any interest or ambition to apply for Indonesian citizenship, also I'm very carefully in answering that question. I suppose that is possible depending on the person's own point of view or interest. In my case, yes, I would like to apply for Indonesian citizenship because I feel very closely to my tanah leluhurku. Maybe in the future, a possible cooperation can berkembang between Indonesia and Suriname in the form of example, in Suriname, we offer PSA, Personen van Surinaamse afkomst, persons with Surinamese heritage or Surinamese descendants could apply for a certain visa citizenship. I think that there must be a development also as well between Suriname and Indonesia concerning visa. But as far as applying for citizenship and granting it to Suriname and vice versa, I'm not really sure yet. But let's see what the developments will be in the future. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mbak Esther, for answering the question. I hope it answers your question, Bill Kadarusman. All right, because we have limited time, maybe we can close the Q&A question now. Time flies quickly, and now we are at the end of the event. Once again, I am reminding all participants to fill out the attendance form because certificates will only be obtained by participants who fill out the attendance form. Make sure all the data filled in the form is right. With the ending of this webinar, we hope that all participants can get more insights related to the Javanese diaspora in the Netherlands and Suriname, and also the valuable experiences that all speakers shared with us today. We also sincerely hope that all the speakers and all the foreign participants can visit us at Javanologi in the future and experience living amidst the Javanese youths in Solo. Okay, thank you to all participants, speakers, and committee members who supported the event from start to finish. I, Anindya Aulia Fikri Dharmawan, as the moderator for the international webinar Youth's Javanese Diaspora Digital Storytelling, Connecting Javanese Roots through Digital Platforms, and the entire committee, thanking you all for all your support. See you next time. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Matur nuwun kabeh para speakers Maybe I haven't closing maybe 1 minute, boleh tidak Mbak?
Silakan Prof.
Oke. Oke, kanggo kabeh para pembicara, speakers and participant here, I would like to thank all the speaker and all the participants in this webinar. We have heard the experiences of the speaker together. All of them is very, very interesting, I think. And the next meeting, maybe, if everyone agree, perhaps we will hear maybe Wongsodikromo experience about his life. Maybe it is important to as information to the Javanese diaspora in Suriname and in the Netherlands. View and involvement in a Japanese culture. Information like this is certainly very important to understand awareness, maybe memory, maybe feeling, and a Javanese wisdom as a whole diachronically. And we can build knowledge and a shared spirit about the dynamic Java, which is a very long history, feeling, and enthusiasm, and all that can nourish our love of Japanese culture in each country and in our own ways. Ladies and gentlemen, in a forum like this, we can talk about whatever we agree on. So beforehand, we can communicate about the next theme, like in process of this meeting, and this webinar has recorded and will be uploaded to the Javanologi website and other supporting social media as we can. This means that at any time, we can open again and learn from the dialogue in the webinar. I can get a many experience and have a new idea. Spontaneously, I thought maybe we should try to think about the modern significance of museum, about the great history of Japanese diaspora in Suriname or Netherlands, even in Solo. So too many ideas we can realize it. Javanologi Institute here, PUI Javanologi UNS have a small museum, and maybe we can complete, and we are trying to make it in Suriname, because the Japanese in Suriname has a long story. So the young generation of Javanese diaspora in Suriname will learn from this museum. So maybe we can maybe spontaneously, it's only spontaneity, and maybe we can trying to think about that. Before I finish this closing statement, maybe I call Johan, maybe can give me 1 and 2 words to close this meeting, please. Pak Johan.
Matur nuwun, Pak Said, and other people on this webinar. It is for me a great experience to hear the young people talking about the Japanese culture and identity. I'm very impressed, and I also curious about the following steps, how to get a form of solution to develop the culture and identity which is needed by the youngsters, because Morgan said there is little time left to learn and to have a knowledge about their own Javanese culture. And because the time is so less, we have to make a plan together with Javanologi, if it is possible, and Diaspora Netherlands. We are prepared to help and to discuss about it. Thank you all. Thank you, Pak Said.
Yes, thank you. And I write from meeting chat also to convey language next time. Thank you. And maybe next time we use Bahasa Jawa and maybe a student from Indonesia can try to learn about the Dutch language, like Mbak Muthia, ya. Oke, thank you so much, matur nuwun, kabeh matur nuwun, Mbak Kathleen yang akeh wis bantu, akeh Mbak matur nuwun banget, dan kabeh Mbak Siske dan semuanya, Mbak
matur nuwun.
Florence, nggih, dan
Matur
kita
nuwun, matur nuwun.
nggih, matur sami-sami, Mbak Maureen, semuanya ada yang lain. Nggih, Mbak Maureen matur nuwun, Mbak Saskia. Iki jane
Ya,
ono
Pak
lagune Mbak
Said,
Saskia, coba makmur lho.
Iya. Nggih.
Nggih.
Om Rakso. Dankjewel. Dat is heel interessant. Ja.
Nggih. Saiki
Nggih,
ora to karo Zoom iki iso mampir to ya. Tuku bakso, tuku sate. Iya to ya. Nah,
Ngrasake bakso Pak Paramaribo.
Als iemand het nodig heeft, mijn man heeft de lijst met de beste Indonesische restaurantjes, want hij werkt bij de ambassade.
Oh, oke.
Mampir.
Ya. Jadi yang mau tahu restoran Indonesia yang paling bagus dan asli yang mana di Belanda, itu suamiku punya daftaran. Kalau ada yang perlu.
Iya. Dan saya sudah aku wis gawe rencana karo Pak Yohan kapan-kapan ngedeki restoran saka Kraton Solo dipindahke ono ing Belanda.
Aku ngerewangi ngicipi mangane.
Matur nuwun.
Saya ikut karena mirip kebau bule. Kebau bulenya Jogja.
Dank je wel allemaal.
Ibu Satuti, urung salami Ibu Satuti. Ya, pas urung Ibu Satuti.
Mas Alif, Mbak Destia, Mas Faris.
Oh, tak telepon Mas Alif.
Bu Septi ya ana sekretaris Javanologi.
Oh, kangen aku.
Tadin.
Ya, Mbak Morgan, can we meet and talk together one of those days?
Yes,
we will involve you by the in the foundation of Diaspora Nederland.
Yes, I would love to. Yeah.
Oke.
Oke, kabeh matur nuwun, aku nyuwun pamit kabeh. Kene wis bengi iki urung bali saka kantor.
Oh, iya.
Oh, nggih. Matur nuwun. Terima kasih semua.
Ya, matur nuwun. Salam.
Mbak Siska iki sing gawe museum Javanologi Mbak Siska.
Oh, nggih.
Till next time.
Iya.
Udah setia.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ya.
Sampai jumpa.
Sampai jumpa, Bu, Mbak.
Ya. Tot ziens dan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anindya.
Bye.